Soon the sun will set, and I swear to you, you shall see it rise again. Do you believe it? Do you believe it?
The stage is set. The pieces are in place. Swords are drawn, and now the war for Middle-earth has begun.
I'm Dominic Patten.
And I'm Anthony D'Alessandro.
Welcome to Deadline's Inside the Ring, the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power after show. This is what the first season of Prime Video's adaptation of the work of J.R.R. Tolkien has been leading up to from the very beginning.
From Arondir fending off the Orcs' horde in the Southlands, to elf warrior Galadriel, human king Halbrand, Númenórean captain Elendil, and the fleet from the Island Kingdom traveling to join the fray, the scope of Rings of Power truly expands this week with a battle royale.
Alliances are made and broken, families and kingdoms are shattered and saved, and mysteries are solved as new realities erupt that will change everything.
It is strange. We're sailing into the dawn, and yet to me, it feels like the coming of night. Elendil is a very significant character in the history of Middle-earth. I think people who read the Lord of the Rings trilogy are quite attached to him as an idea of a hero. And that's also a double-edged sword, because you feel the responsibility for the fan base and obviously for Tolkien to represent this character correctly.
I feel the weight of expectation of people have a sense of ownership over Isildur in a way, because he's in the books, they've seen him in the film, and so they start to build up this idea of who this guy is in their own minds.
You've got security. They can kill me whenever they want if I'm not doing what they want. Especially like as a young person, to see an opportunity for the world to watch, Theo grow, not only as a person but physically grow. I think that's going to be really, really cool.
Boy to man.
From boy to
But
man.
it's also exciting for you because, there is the unexpected. You don't quite know where your story's going to go.
Yeah.
I'm on some train tracks here. The good thing about this show is we're able to kind of explore him from the beginning, from the ground up.
That's the privilege of opening him up and finding out who he is truly and deeply as a human, or at least as a Númenórean.
I want to make Isildur human. So whatever journey he's on, I'm going to make him as relatable as possible, because I think he is a young, volatile kind of kid, I've definitely experienced that growing up. I didn't ever want to just be like, you have to do this. Your dad telling me, both our characters have
Both
daddy
of you
issues.
have intense parents. Isildur's relationship with dad is very complicated. You defy him.
You know what? The question that I think is that he's not defying him. He's also trying at the beginning of the season to do what he is expected. Like his father is kind of paving his career choice, and he is a sailor. He's a sea cadet, and he is trying to fulfill his father's dream, but there's just this sort of dissonance to him, this sort of unsettled restlessness. There's a scene where he's just like looking out when he's on this boat, and he's just looking out into the ocean, to the horizon. He's like, there's something else out there. Maybe it's off this island. In that way, I think he honors his father. He's like saying, I'm trying to do this, but let me explore myself. Let me grow.
Report to the horsemaster.
Thought I was in cavalry.
You are. Stable sweep. I think he really recognizes something of his own youth in his son, which definitely my experience of being a father to sons. Deep down, he wants him on that boat and he wants him with him, but he struggles with his own moral code about what's the right thing to do. He can't put him to the head of the queue just because he suddenly decided he wants to become a hero. There are ways of conducting oneself as a man that Isildur needs to learn, and so I think Elendil's quite rigid on that. But when there's an opportunity, and this is where there's a nice bit of grey area around the decision to allow him onto the boat, I think because it's grey and because of his desire to have his son with him, I think he allows that to happen. So he sort of slightly overcomes his own strict moral code at that point. It's been a difficult time between the father and the son up until this point, but they end up in the foxhole together, and so that creates a very different dynamic. And I think particularly Isildur, he has a moment of risk of loss of his father, and I think for him, he sees that's how crucial life is. And My dad used to say to me all the time, sadly, he'd say, oh, you can't put an old head on young shoulders, and unfortunately you can't. And Elendil knows that, and I think to a certain extent, despite his frustration with Isildur, he has patience within him sometimes, and I think it's a beautiful moment between them at that point, because he can see his son grow up, and he's able to reassure him that he's doing well.
When push comes to shove and you see death nearing someone that you love, it kind of puts your disagreements and a lot of your problems on hold, and you just see a human that you love. And there's, I think, that moment where I see my father, about to die. I rush over to him and hold him, and we kind of settle our issues, and we just realize it's father and son, and we're just there together.
When a horse of Westernness rides into battle, he forms an unbreakable bond, knowing the innermost feelings of each other's heart.
Where did you learn all this?
From your mother.
Elendil is haunted by demons and the death of his wife. How does this impact his relationship with his kids and life overall?
This idea of being widowed and having to deal with his own grief, while at the same time put his own grief on hold because of the turbulence that's created in his children, and trying to move forward and keep them as emotionally safe and well as he can, which is part of the reason that he's moved them from the west of Numenor, which is where the faithful are, into the city of Numenor. But that's also a sort of slight rejection in him, because being faithful means that you understand that death is the gift of Iluvatar. So it's actually a good thing somehow. And I think part of the move into the capital city of Numenor is that in the loss of his wife, I don't think he can stomach the idea that this is in any way a gift. And so I think there's a part rejection of that way. Again, when Galadriel then comes in, he's pushed back to the elven ways just because of his instinctive connection to her. So I think this is what's been so brilliant about JD and Patrick. They've put him on that dividing line between these two sets of feelings, and grief does very different things to all of us at different times, and that's what you find in this family, is that they're all reacting at a different pace and in different ways to the loss of that significant person in their lives.
It is a tradition among elves. Before the battle begins, plant one.
Every time there's evil, Tolkien talks about the destruction of nature, and so this is the planting of new life, essentially, to counter that evil. It's the promise that the shadows will be overcome with light.
And it's that seed that made it through. It's that seed that is going to grow. It's that seed that is going to support you. It's that it's that care, it's that detail. That love is in the detail as well. It's like outfitting seeds, in that first scene. Whereas at that point later, we had to crush, it's like, you crushed them, and actually get to crush these seeds. And there's an elven human exchange that actually ends up saving her, teaching me. That moment fuses human and elf together. Theo is there, he's also helping, he's also experiencing this, and we become a unit.
There's also this bond between us is very much through nature. You, of course, are an elf, and I'm a healer, and I depend on herbs and nature to make my concoctions to heal people. So that also bonds us on a deep level.
On episode 6, it was epic, directed by the great Charlotte Brandstrom. There's a lot of preparation for that. It was a lot of rehearsals, a lot of emotional digging, because it's kind of the cathartic Southland moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of stunt training. A lot of emotions on my part. In fact, I think Charlotte at one point said, "Naz, you're off camera, you can stop crying." Because I was drowning out the sound. I was trying to keep it real, guys. I was just trying to sort of give my co-stars something. But yeah, it was very intense, but also huge, like you said, hugely cathartic to do those scenes. The whole season for us has been sort of a battle to overcome, and to get to that sort of pinnacle moment of it all coming together, and us being faced with the real evil of it all.
This is to be our keep, our fallback point.
You see Bronwyn grow into this leader, trying to bring her people together, finding her voice, facing opposition, still to the very last minute. Arondir. He asks to fight alongside them, and they kind of also accept him. You were our foe, we still don't know, but we're gonna take you into the fold. Is the people rising, you know? They take arms on their own. They're not waiting for anybody else to save them. They get backup later, but I mean, the Southlanders kind of kick ass before anybody else.
And the thing about the battle is, I feel that the Númenóreans are superhuman. Even though Elendil will not have fought yet, this is the first time he finds himself on a battlefield. The question was, do you show your inexperience in battle? But I feel with the Númenóreans, it's like playing sport against an Olympian or someone who's a world champion. For the rest of us, they're just so quick. They're so smart. They see the game from a different angle, and I think that's definitely the case with them on the battlefield. Even though he ends up in a moment of jeopardy, but that's literally a numbers game. He is completely outnumbered at that point.
The battle sequence is pretty...
It's intense.
Intense. I think for Hal, he knows that he's returning to a place that was like home. And I think when he goes, he knows what he's going to be coming across. He's seen the beginnings of it and the machinations of what's about to happen. And I think he knows when he comes, it's like he's bringing a potential new life and this person that he's just met back to his past. So I think as well as he knows there's going to be physical conflict and a lot of danger, there's also going to be some really conflicting emotions that he's going to feel because he's seeing things from his past and bringing this whole new world.
And home is always full of baggage.
Yeah.
You do look very heroic in that. The armor, when you first came out in your armor, everyone was very impressed.
Yeah, there was
like, it really does look like a hero.
It's pretty spectacular. The armor is very
And it makes you enormous.
Yeah.
You're big anyway,
massive. But yeah, the scenes with Adar and all the emotion and the baggage, as you say, surrounding that make it a really complex, rich thing to play. And it was really enjoyable. I mean, combining that with doing the physical things of being able to ride a horse through a forest really fast and you're chasing a motorbike filming you, and then there's a Porsche with like a huge camera on it driving along the side of you, and you're charging through all these trees. The process of doing that is jaw-dropping, and that was when I sort of was like, wow, this is happening.
It was amazing.
You know,
and the horses looked so beautiful. Their costuming was incredible, and the horses we were on, like particularly mine.
Oh, Titan.
He was like the pride of all those horse trainers.
Well,
he was. Okay. So I felt like I was on the Porsche of horses.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Now! We see in episode 6 the first really big battle scene of the Rings of Power. Give us a sense of what your preparation was for that.
Well, it was a lot of work. Starting from scratch, I always try to find a perspective in everything I do. Even in battles and action, you're telling a story. It's not just about explosions and fighting. So I always try to find a point of view, and from whose point of view I tell the story. There were 2 battles actually in 6. There was the first one with the orcs, and then there's the Númenórean coming in and riding in. So once I sort of decide what the story, what characters I focus on in each battle, I do storyboards. But I also like to work with models. So I have art department preparing like these models of the set. It's like preparing a real battle in a way, like going to war. I get like these small horses and small soldiers, and I move them around on the model, and that way I can think of what I want to do, and also explain to people. We have meetings around the model, and we're saying this is how the battle is moving. They're coming from this direction and this direction. And for me, it's much easier to physically see it and touch something than actually working on these 3D sketches and everything. I get a feeling for it.
You're wrong. You don't know what I did before I ended up on that run. You don't know how I survived. How we all survived.
In this scene, they sort of each have to face their sort of deepest emotional fears.
So this is about vengeance.
One cannot satisfy thirst by drinking seawater.
Then what is it?
For Galadriel, she finally admits that this isn't really about vengeance. It's really about kind of restoring light to her soul.
Halbrand, put it down. One cannot satisfy thirst by drinking seawater.
Why does Galadriel want to stop him from delivering the death blow? Galadriel has sort of crossed every line in her search for Sauron. Her company mutinied against her. She jumped off the boat to Valinor against her king's orders and continued the quest that she began on. And she's finally caught the person she's been pursuing. So she needs to bring him back to her king to prove that she was right, to prove that all of the things she did were worth it.
When it was in my hands, I felt powerful.
The Hill. What can you tell us about it?
It's activated by blood, and the reason we did that is I think we just thought it could be cool. We thought it'd be fun if it was like an old relic from the first stage, kind of like a piece of Nazi memorabilia or whatever. We tie it to Sauron in episode 5. So it has obviously dark origins, and then of course we find out in this episode that it's not a sword. I think we're sort of led to believe that it's a sword for the first few episodes, and in this one we realize it's actually a key to the dam. And we don't know why at this juncture, but it's kind of the key to unlocking the entirety of Vidar's master plan. He's been building these tunnels, and you've probably been wondering why for the entire season, and the hilt finally reveals what the tunnels were all about.
As well as these big battle scenes in Rings of Power, of course, there's iconic elements of this that always play into anything involving Middle-earth. In this case, the eruption of Mount Doom.
That was tougher in a way, because there I couldn't have a model about the explosions and everything. So there I worked a lot with previs, and we have like an absolutely incredible VFX team. So together with them, we looked at a lot of references from various movies, and we tried to find references for even volcanic eruptions in the world today, from Pompeii to the ones that happened on the Canary Islands to the one in Italy. So we looked at all kind of various eruptions and ash clouds and all kind of stuff, and we made some choices, and there was a lot of storyboarding.
For the Rings of Power, we worked with a huge symphonic orchestra, usually about 90 players, a massive choir, usually about 40 or 45 singers, and then a group of percussionists and soloists, anywhere from 7 to 10 players, that would play all these specialty colors. Perhaps the most fun is the sounds you'll hear with the orcs. I wanted the orcs to feel primal and scary, and I found some players that play woodwind instruments that are made from bones, and they're not all animal bones. One of them is a human femur, and they're bones that have holes drilled in them so they can be played like flutes. There's antlers and conch shells, shofars, just the kinds of things that look like an orc would pick it up and blow into it to call the army forth. There's an instrument called an Aztec death whistle, which is a whistle that is traditionally shaped like a skull. When you blow into it, it sounds like a human screaming. And that's all over the score. Every time you hear that sound, you know orcs are coming. So the sound of the orcs is brutal. I have these tribal drums playing, hide skins, and you hear the hands on the skins, and then you hear this ethereal, trippy bone sound, this bone flute sound. We called them the war horns because they're terrifying. But that was the goal, right? To take the orcs and really amp up their identity as a culture and amp up the terror.
Thank you for joining us once again on Deadlines Inside the Ring.
We'll be back next week with another behind-the-scenes look at Prime Video's The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power.
Whoa, oh my God. I see the whole...
See you later. We have to try everything, right?
I'll be keeping this for later.
I don't care about the show. I just want a good blooper reel.
I want to learn science.
You guys are going to make me look like I'm in the show, right? You're going to put in the effects. Replace the green. I don't want to look like an asshole here.
Sorry.